Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm going to go ahead and get us started before handing it over to our instructor today. Thank you again for joining us for Avoid Identity Theft and Scams. If that's what you're looking for, you're in the right place. This program is brought to you by the CSU Alumni Association and is sponsored by Canvas Credit Union. My name is Sophie, and I work for the Alumni Association. I'm a proud alum as well, and I'm excited to join you in learning from our guest presenter, Kim, today. Before I officially kick it off to her, though, I do want to go over some quick housekeeping. We're running this event via StreamYard and YouTube. And if you're unfamiliar with either of those, that's okay. We're going to work through it together. We'd love for you to ask questions or comment on the material as we go. And if you have anything that comes to mind, we'd love for you to share it. You can do so if you're watching on StreamYard by using the chat feature. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can go ahead and use the comment section. It all comes to the same place for us, so we'll make sure that you have your question answered. But if you have an issue with posting your question or comment or something's going wrong, feel free to email me directly and I will post it on behalf of you. You can email me. I'll put my email right on the screen here. And you can email me directly. I'll put it in the comments as well. So if anything pops up and you're just needing some help with that, feel free to email me directly. I want to do two quick thank yous as well before we get started officially with our program. First is a thank you to our CSU Alumni Association members who are tuning in today. Your support through membership makes connective and educational programs like this possible, and this measure of RAM pride is so strong and important. Secondly, a thank you to Canvas Credit Union, not only for presenting and teaching today, but for sponsoring the alumni career programs as a whole and allowing us to have great resources for RAMs both on campus and around the world. Now, I'm going to officially hand things off to Kim, our presenter.
Hello, welcome everyone to our seminar today about avoiding identity theft and scams. I'm Kim from Canvas Credit Union. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. There's a lot of great things that we can learn to help keep ourselves protected. And I love the interaction. So if you have any questions or comments, please don't hesitate to use the chat. I'll stop periodically throughout the seminar and try to answer your questions. So let's get started. Here's the agenda. Let's go to the just one. There we go. Here's the agenda of what we're going to go over today. You know, it's really impossible to completely protect ourselves from identity theft and scams. But today I'm hoping that we can learn so that we can decrease our chances of being affected by understanding risky actions and how the bad guys work. So today we'll touch on all of these specific topics and end with some resources for you to do some further research if you'd like. Many really smart people get taken advantage of. So there's not just one group that they target. So again, our goal today is to reduce the likelihood of being a victim. And our two biggest suggestions on this topic are that you know your approach to risk versus convenience, and that you find a way to slow down and to think before acting. And so that's kind of how we're going to focus this next hour of fleshing out those different ideas. So let's first talk about statistics and trends. So P2P, what does that stand for? That is peer-to-peer payments. So P2P fraud is on the rise as more people use payment methods that move money directly from one personal account to another. So this includes, Venmo, Cash App, Zelle, Apple. So once you send the money using those apps, it is gone. The purpose is to request and send the funds as needed, right? Pretty quick, simple, and the funds are available with minutes, and you can split bills at restaurants. It's really convenient. It doesn't require to know any routing numbers or account numbers. And a lot of institutions, financial institutions, will no longer dispute these types of charges because you have to authorize the charge before you send it. So once you use these P2P payment methods, so let's say you're buying something from someone and you don't receive the item, there will be no way for you to dispute it to get your money back. So oftentimes, I know at Canvas, if you are sending something through Zelle, you will be asked several times before you complete the transaction, Do you know this person? Do you want to do this? Because again, once you send that money, you won't be able to get it back and dispute it. So, a trend for several years has been less criminal interest in getting credit card numbers and more interest in getting personal identifying information. There's probably a couple of reasons for that. And one is that chip technology has really made cards safer. When using your chip on a card, a one-time encrypted code is created for every transaction. The other is that giant data breaches that happen at least, in the last few years are very common, unfortunately, means that so much of our information is available for crooks. So getting your information allows them to be able to do more with it, right? So they take advantage of this activity. So the more we use social media or put our social security numbers out there or get a new app, everything comes with the risk. So on the flip side, though, if we never use technology, we are at risk of losing more money because of the delay in seeing your accounts, right? So it's really nice to have online mobile banking. So if you send something, or you can always kind of look at your accounts and you get like alerts. But if we didn't have online banking, sometimes we wouldn't know what was going on with our accounts if we had to wait 30 days for, a statement to come in the mail. So it's just really important to understand the convenience and speed. And you simply can't offer fast and easy shopping or account access without really having an increased risk. So we must decide when we're going through this and deciding on what we want to use the technology, especially for pay to pay conveniences, the risk and the reward. And it's really a balancing act. Let's keep going. So who is most at risk? So you might be thinking, oh, it's more the older generation, but actually everyone is at risk. Depending on your age, you may be more at risk than certain types of fraud. A theme for the bad guys is to take advantage of the unknown and use the complicated and the vulnerable to take advantage. So you could be like student loans, a new Medicare program, new tax laws, and then of course, whenever there's something terrible happening in the world, such as COVID, that's a perfect opportunity to be taken advantage of. So fraudsters try fake cures, unemployment scams, fake charities, fake job offers, fake stimulus checks, work from home security systems or lapsing, or you need to download some software for your computer. And these are all scams. So if you think about recently, they had a student loan forgiveness plan program that was full of scams in full force. Then you had to be really vigilant and careful on that. And usually red flags are waving just like crazy so that we'll be able to see, is this real or is this a scam? Would have like a sense of urgency or secrecy, right? To help you understand. And we're going to go more deep into what those red flags might look like. Some might be scammers use official, like fake titles of agency names, or they'll use real agency names. On the phone, they might transfer you to a superior or a different department. Just for the record, none of the government agencies, such as like the Social Security Department, the labor force, or the IRS, or Medicaid, or Medicare, are ever going to call you and threaten you. That's really a common theme with a lot of the scams that I've seen. So before the position that I hold now here at Canvas, I'm the community involvement specialist. I was a branch leader at many of our branches in Fort Collins. And unfortunately, I saw a lot of scams and people coming into the branches. And at CSU campus, I'll just talk about one that we had. We had a student who came in who was about a year ago, well, a couple years ago, actually, the same type of year, new freshman, super excited, on her own. And just like all freshmen, it's like, okay, I'm living on my own. Things are expensive. Everything's new, scheduling. And so she came in and she wanted to open a new account and she had this check. And I looked at the check and I knew right away that that was not a real check. And I wanted to find out more, right? So to understand a scam, you really need to ask really good questions. And so I asked her about the check, and she was like, "Oh, yeah. So I got this email, and it's a professor here on campus, and he is paraplegic, and he can't run errands for himself around campus. So he gave me this check as a prepayment before I start the job. And then all I have to do is run errands for him on campus because he can't, because he's a quadriplegic." And so a couple of red flags right there, if you didn't, they didn't stick out for yourselves, is you would never accept payment for a job you haven't done, right? Like, that's a little tricky. She showed me the email that showed that she had this job offer, and it looked so real. Like they used the CSU logo, and it looked very, very real. But there's a little bit of blurriness in the email on the phone. And when we talked about it and we uncovered it, she realized that it was a scam, and she ended up not cashing the check. And a lot of times, if it's so easy, right, like that job, oh, all I got to do is walk around campus and I get paid for it. Ask yourself if it's real, because, earning money is not always easy, right? They want it to be easy. So that's why a lot of people fall for it. But unfortunately, that week of school starting over at CSU campus, we probably had about 10 to 12 students that came in with that same email, asking the same questions, wanting to cash this check. So it's pretty prevalent because all these new freshmen are wanting to have money, and it just seemed like such a great way to earn money. So it just happens so regularly. And then I have lots of stories of people, posing as Canvas credit union employees and calling our members and having these urgencies of needing to change passwords. I even had one with my own daughter who was calling and posing as a Canvas employee to my daughter. And so you just got to be really, really vigilant and ask lots of great questions. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that as the slide progresses, and I'll share more of that story. But I do want to pause. Does anybody have any questions in the chat that you can see? Sophie, do you see anything on your side?
Not yet. So we should be all good. But if you have any questions, again, feel
Doesn't
free
seem
to
like it.
pop
So
them
we'll
in.
just keep going. Okay. So what is Full Z and how much does it cost? We're going to explore that a little bit more. So if cyber criminals have a holy grail, it is your Full Z, or your full set of personal information. So fraudsters acquire and sell this information through packages on the dark web. They access the dark web using the Tor, T-O-R, a system that scrambles users' virtual trails so they cannot be traced. Excuse me. Identities sell for various prices depending on the accuracy and the availability of the information. Sellers frequently offer discounts to buy in bulk on Full Z. Often, fraudsters obtain Full Z through corporate and institutional data breaches. Insurance companies, commercial and financial institutions fall victim due to the sensitivity of the information that they possess. These breaches are often triggered by accidental downloads of malware by an employee, but there are other several causes as well. Businesses and institutions often make themselves very, very vulnerable because of the poor quality of internet security or the lack that they have thereof. So let's talk a little bit more about prices. So to buy a Full Z, that will start around only $30 on the dark web. And that's even less if you decide to buy in bulk. So the bad guys can pay less and fill out the information and buy with their own research using social media or public records. So let's just talk some examples of what it costs. So criminals can buy a credit card number for 50 cents. And if you add the CCV code, they'll pay $1, right? Driver's license are $20. Social security numbers are $1. And if you're thinking to yourself, you're like, what? This is so cheap. And it is. And it's the concept really of supply and demand. So right now, due to huge data breaches that are happening over the last several years, like think about it. In the mail for me, I've gotten, like, I can even think this year a couple of times, my medical doctor or either me or my husband, that there's been a breach and to be aware, to keep our eye on our accounts. So there is a lot of supply and demand, which lowers those prices on the dark web with our personal information. So fraud protection basics. So here are some basics that we're going to just talk about being safe. So when was the last time you looked at your credit report? So when you go apply for a loan online, like at Canvas or at any other financial institution, they have to pull your credit. So you can ask at that time to look at your credit report. You can also look at your credit report and review it for free once a year at each credit bureau. Another thing is distraction and speed. These can be your enemy. So we get in the groove and we just click, 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 click. So it's really, really important to stop and to slow down the clicking, because that's kind of what scam artists are hoping that you're going to be doing. They often pretend to be someone too that you trust, like a representative from a charity or a company that you do business with. So make sure that you're always cautious, especially when speaking to a stranger on the phone or replying to an email. Many victims know that thieves also keep your cards and your passwords. So keep everything safe at home. So one of the good things to do is look at your wallet, clean out your wallet. Do you have your social security card in there? It doesn't need to be in there. Like my mom used to, I was just cleaning out my mom's house and she carried around all of the kids' social security numbers in her wallet. And I was like, oh, that's probably not very good. So like, go ahead and like clean out your wallet and ask yourself if you need it. Like, when you travel, do you need all those credit cards, or can you only use one when you're traveling? Look at your glove box in your car, right? So do you need to, like, on your insurance information for your car information or for your registration, you get 2 copies. One has your address on it and one doesn't, right? So do you want to have your address on it, have it in your car? If it gets stolen, then they have access to your home. So just kind of be really aware of what's in your car. Go through your sensitive documents. If it's expired, go ahead and shred it. Unfortunately, I got hit a couple of weeks ago and we opened up my glove box and I was like, I do not need all of these old insurance with my address on it, right? So taking those out and shredding them, that was really something that I learned this week. So make sure you just kind of are always reviewing those documents and that it's clean and that you don't have things that you don't need that have that like sensitive information. Also, is your information correct for your contact on your file with your credit card companies or any financial institutions? If there's some fraudulent activity happening on your cards, the institution's going to reach out to you. Do they have your updated address? Do they have your updated phone number? Those are really, really important, because if you haven't updated those things, then it's going to be really hard to get a hold of you. And then, of course, tax fraud really has increased the last few years. So filing early in the tax season avoids someone else beating you to your refund and different things like that. So that's really important to file your taxes early as well. Let's talk about mail. So mail theft still happens, unfortunately. Our resources slide at the end will show you how you can opt out from like receiving less junk mail and pre-screened credit card offers that have your personal information. For your documents with sensitive info, I would really recommend shredding them. There's lots of different options at some financial institutions that will have shred bins inside the lobby. So what I have at my garage is I just have a box up above some lockers that I have. So all of my mail that has sensitive information or things that I don't need anymore, I just drop in that box. And then the community has a lot of great shred days. I know Canvas Credit Union offers shred days to the community. You don't have to just be a member, and you can drop off all of your personal information. They have the shred bin right there. So they take the box, they walk it over right to the shredder, and you watch them put it in the shredder, and they shred all your documents right there. So it's very secure and very, very safe. And then some people have opted just to using PO boxes to increase security. You can also do informed delivery through UPS, which allows you to preview your mail electronically, so you can tell if anything's missing or when important things are going to be delivered. So that's a couple of really good options as well. All right, electronic devices. So you'll have a lot of passwords or biometrics like facial ID or fingerprints or critical. Use them. Like if you have an option on your phone or your computer, make sure that you've opted in. You don't just skip over it or set up later, right? Updates to your phone are really, really critical. So when you get an alert, make sure you update your phone. Um, Public Wi-Fi, let's talk about that. So public Wi-Fi from like Starbucks is not usually the best place to access sensitive sites. Like if you are at Starbucks and you want to look at the menu and so you use their Wi-Fi because your phone's in a dead spot, that's great, right? If you're from Fort Collins, I don't know, or you're familiar with Fort Collins, Harmony and Ziegler, that's like a dead zone. And if you go to Target there, forget it. Like you cannot get on your phone if you need to in the store. It's just so slow. So getting on like Target's Wi-Fi or something if you need to find something in the store or to access their app, like that's okay. Just don't be in public Wi-Fi when you're trying to like pay bills or do things. Like if you're waiting at the Denver airport and you access their Wi-Fi and you're waiting there for a couple hours, let's not access any of our financial information or anything that has our personal information on it, because that makes us really susceptible. Bluetooth makes you accessible as well. You can be intercepted from within 30 feet by somebody, and they're usually just really small devices that are really, really easily hidden in a backpack or a bag. The technology required to intercept your information for public Wi-Fi and Bluetooth is actually pretty cheap. And so make sure you just choose a safer way in your settings and signing in. One option, you could consider a VPN for your personal security. Companies use virtual private networks to access secure internet access. I have a VPN, so whenever I'm away from Canvas, branches, or the home office, I have to access everything through a VPN network. You can also do the same. It's pretty inexpensive for your personal use and to look into that. It's also been suggested by experts to turn off access to your camera and your microphone and your location unless you're really needing it. So if you're on an app and you're setting up an app, they usually want to follow you or they ask you all these questions. Best practice is to turn all of that off. And then where you're using the app, you can go into settings, change it so you can do what you need to do, and then go back after you're done and reset it so they don't have access. Yes, it takes more time. But again, the question is, are we trying to be a little bit more safe? And trying to balance that convenience with the risk. So it will take maybe a few more seconds to turn the location services on and off. And it's kind of a little bit annoying, but in the end, it does keep you a lot safer. All right, let's talk about keyloggers and skimmers. So keyloggers are a way scammers track you, like track what you're typing. So this is usually added to your computer through malware that you download when clicking on a bad link. And then someone will remotely have a way to track what you type, and then they'll know what your password is and be able to get into your account. And this is kind of what happened to my daughter. So she was a freshman at another school, not at CHU. I know it's kind of sad, but she chose differently. We love her. And she was in her dorm. She was studying for finals, and she got this pop-up about some virusware that she needed to like download, and she clicked on it, and they used that keylogger of scamming and finding out what her password was, and they got into her account, and they said that they were taking all this money away from her, and they accused her of all these horrible things. And she's just this really timid, introverted, beautiful girl, and it was just so emotionally wrecking for her that her whole logic of like being logical and making good choices and like understanding like this isn't possible. These people are bad. They had just attacked her right to the core, and she didn't know what to do. And then they started saying that they were from Canvas and they were going to like report her. And so she's away from home, and I work for Canvas, and all she needed to do was call me and we could talk about this and we could get this taken care of. But she just didn't have the right mind frame to do that. And so she was doing everything they were telling her to do. And luckily, my little niece that came over when this was all going down, called me, and I was like, give me the phone. So I like talked to them, and I was like, you say you work for Canvas Credit Union? what is your name? I'm going to look you up in the direct. And they hung up, and we were able at the last second save. They were trying to take $4,000 out of her account. And so it was nutso. So it's just really important. Do not click on anything. It's really hard emotionally to like separate that when they dig into those really vulnerable states that you're in, to think logically. But the key is that she had a second pair of eyes, right? Like my niece was there and was able to be like, this doesn't seem right, we're going to get help. So I would offer that same encouragement to you, that if you don't feel safe about something, get a second pair of eyes. Ask your spouse, ask your partner, ask your coworker, jump into your financial institution and have them take a peek. Like that's what they want to do. They want to protect you and help you. So please take time to do that. So skimming, so let's talk about skimming. So skimming is taking your information off your card stripe. It's down, like skimming kind of is not as like the type of scam that's used most often, because chips, we use chips, right, instead of the stripe. So, but it's still important to be aware of. Always look when you go to a gas pump or an ATM closely before you insert your card. I'll tell you an experience that happened when I was at a branch in Fort Collins. The procedure before you open a branch is to make sure that everything is safe, right? And so one of the things is to check all the ATMs to make sure they were ATMs. And you take your hand and you kind of outline it and make sure that everything feels funny. There's nothing that's out of the ordinary. And when I say out of the ordinary, like any little bump, like tiny little like sand, like just little things. So we were checking the ATM, making sure that it was, and there was just this tiny little like sand molecule, just tiny little bump on there. And we reported it and called the company in for the ATM machine. And definitely there was a skimmer on it. Shut the ATM down, and there was a gentleman that was in his car across the street with his computer downloading information. And so that gentleman who was fixing the card machine, who worked for the company that takes care of all those things, he was telling me some situations that have happened in Fort Collins as well, of card skimmers at the gas pump. And that's a lot of times where a lot of people do get hacked on their debit cards, and their credit cards are at the gas pumps, because it's just so easy to place one there, right? So he was telling me about a gas station off of Harmony, who the gas attendant was also part of the scam ring. And so he allowed these people to come into the pumps, and he just turned his head and would get some of the profit off of it. And so it's just really prevalent and really good thing to make sure that when you get your gas, you just kind of checked, make sure that there's not anything on there that looks suspicious or doesn't feel correct. You can always go inside and prepay if you're really worried about it. I did that a little bit ago, especially if I'm getting gas out of state and just as kind of a, I'm traveling and I'm kind of in a weird out of nowhere place. I'll usually just go inside and put 30 bucks on, or now it's what, 50, 60, 80 bucks on your card for gas. Gas is getting so expensive. So anyway, that's kind of some of the tips, is just make sure that you really check those machines. And I would encourage to use a credit card instead of a debit card, so that they don't have access to your personal account. It's just your credit. All right, phishing scams. So always use common sense when determining if an email is actually a phishing scam. So here's some specific red flags, okay? So grammatical errors. So if you get an email and you're reading it and it doesn't quite make sense, or there's like a capital and there shouldn't be, or a lowercase or a period or whatever, okay, that's a red flag. If it asks you to follow a link, click here, definitely a red flag. Any type of attachment is a red flag. If you need to confirm any of your personal information and anything, that's always usually a red flag, especially like if they're saying they're a financial institution and they're calling you and they want you to confirm. Well, they have your information, right? So they're not going to be asking you for that. So if there's any type of email that addresses you as dear customer, or again, when they're playing on your emotions and they're saying something bad's going to happen if you don't act quickly and that seems really, really urgent, take a pause. That's probably something that is involved with scams. And I'll just pause right here real quick since I've been talking so much. Do we have any comments or questions in the chat that we want to go over of any of the things that we've talked about, or stories that you want to share?
Yeah. Hi, Kim. Can you hear me? Just verifying. Okay, she is having some issues, so we'll get together afterwards. It
Okay,
doesn't seem
no
she can hear me.
problem. Let's keep
I'll
going.
connect you all
All
directly.
right, so again, let's kind of continue talking about phishing. So, common sense is the best when determining if an email is actually a phishing scam. So, really, really, really important. Slow down, don't click, verify. So, if somebody sends you an email and you know the company or you know the person, you can call or text. A lot of times on Facebook, right? You'll get a friend request or different things. You can send a little message or send something to be like, hey, did you know that I think you've been hacked, or is this you? Did you send this? That really helps. So if you didn't ask for the email and you don't recognize the sender, the unsubscribe button, is it safe? It could also have malware planted on it. So how you can check is you're going to hover your mouse over a link to reveal the true destination or the website to get the info about the address. I did this really recently when I was starting to receive junk mail from a sender and I did not recognize. And then sometimes crooks can take a more targeted approach with their phishing. So, spear phishing means that they have a selected particular people in the company to email. And it's usually people that have like financials, right? So that's spear phishing is when they're targeting certain people in the company. Catfishing is when people are using false social media profiles to catch you. And whaling is when they're targeting like big executives for information on their emails. So really important to be diligent on that. Um, okay, so let's talk a little bit more about some of these examples. So here's a quick look at what a phishing email can look like. If you can familiarize yourself with the things to look for and really slow down, you can have a really good way to keep yourself safe. So, we've talked about it on the previous slides that if you aren't expecting the email from someone, it's likely could be a scam. But how can we identify a phishing email from a sender that would not be out of the ordinary? Like Amazon. So I shop on Amazon all the time. Like it's super convenient, especially around Christmas time when I'm trying to send gifts to people. It's like, oh, just buy through Amazon. I don't have to go to the post office. It makes it so much easier. So seeing an email from Amazon, is something that doesn't really stick out. And at quick glance, you might think it's okay. So let's go ahead and examine this email a little bit. So if you open either one of these emails, and see that Amazon has notified you that there was a fraudulent activity on your account, you may be quick to click on the next steps or take action. But that's exactly what they want you to do. So the fraudsters want you to do that, and they want you to take quick action with little attention of looking at it. But a great tip is to see if is it a legitimate email is to know the sender. And you can hover over that email address, and if it looks like it's funky, it is. It is funky. It would say from if it is or was from Amazon, it would say from Amazon.com or order update at Amazon.com. If the email address is misspelled or incomplete and a bunch of mumbo jumbo on it, you know that it is a scam. Now, take the email on the right side, for example. The line says it is from Amazon.com, but if you actually hover over the sender, you see that it did not come from Amazon.com. It came from adap at sci.ng. So that's pretty different and pretty funky. So we know that that is not that is a scammed email. Or if we have the email on the left, if I quickly look at it, I would say it looks like it could be real. Again, if we pay closer attention, we could see that it says accounts at Amazon.com. So they left that A out, like Mazon.com. So this step alone, you can tell that you need all that you need to know. And that's kind of the quickest and simplest way to check. So be suspicious of emails that claim you must click, call, or open the attachment like immediately, like we've talked about. Or if they ask you to act now to receive a reward or a penalty, a lot of times they create that false sense of urgency. And it's a very, very common trick. So if like they say you won money, but you never like entered a sweepstakes or different things, why would somebody be paying you money if you didn't enter anything? That doesn't happen. So they do that a lot. Also, we talked about that generic dear customer. It wasn't specifically addressed to you. And just like that, you can hover over the sender's email and you can hover over the links of the attachments to make sure that the link addresses match the link sent in the email. The example here over on the left displays a different link than what appears to be in the body of the email as well. And then most files that have like an attachment will always be malicious. So always scan that. So there's PDFs, Word docs, or even images files can all contain malware. And a security firm or F Security claims that 85% of malicious emails have a doc, a .xls, or a .pdf, or a zip, or a zz attachment to it. And those are all bad. So you should always scan if there's attachments. And even if you know the sender, be suspicious of that. And then checking to make sure the branding is on point. In the example that I shared about the CSU, the branding for the CSU logo was the same branding, but it was just off-centered a little bit and a little bit blurry. So like for the Amazon example, maybe this is the orange arrow might be a little bit off, or it might have a little like haze to it. And it's also really hard to tell as well. So give yourself some grace, but just remember if something looks fishy, that is because it is. So play it safe and scan the email and just rely on your gut to help you like determine that. And then just ask for a second pair of eyes or call and be due diligent. So if you wanted to call about the Amazon email, I would suggest going into your Amazon app to get help or to get the number instead of getting the number off the email, right? So using your resources of what you already know and have to make the contact and not use the resources that are provided on the email to contact. All right, let's talk about social media, right? We have to balance our social side with our practical risk for social media, right? So a lot of you who are very active on social media, I wanted to highlight 2 suggestions. Know your privacy settings and do not connect with people that you don't know. It's really true for all sites. If you log in, you should log out. Regarding logging into these other sites with Facebook or Google, you may find some conflicting advice. So if that option is really helpful, at least do some research before you decide to continue. So any information that's entered into contests or surveys is usually often shared in ways that you don't like. So just make sure that you feel really comfortable with it. That you I'm a little weary of always having like my Google sign into my Facebook or different things like that. So I prefer not to do that. So just trying to be smart and making sure that you are really wary of your privacy and not, connecting with people that you may not know. Okay. All right. Passwords. Let's talk about some do's and don'ts with passwords, right? So you probably heard most of them, probably you're practicing them. Password cracking technology is really, really fast. All the things on the don't list are easily figured out. Some good practices are listed, and if you are using bogus answers on security questions, that means you need to be sure that you remember your lies. So like for instance, if your high school mascot was an eagle, and you said that it was a pigeon, did you remember that? I think that's probably one of my problems when I do my passwords is I'll make up this really great password and then I'll forget it, right? And then I go in and we're resetting passwords quite a bit. So one of the things to help with that and to help is to manage your passwords. And you could use like some managers are like Password Keepers or LastPass or Dashlane. And you can, if you have a password keeper that you like, you can go ahead and throw that in the chat. Another thing really do is for passwords is to use password phrases. A good password show is no nonsense at most. What it means is new. So you have like a pass phrase, and you could use like 4 random words, including capital letters and spaces and symbols. 6-letter words are better. And it turns out to be much easier for humans to remember when they have these passphrases instead of just these random letters and numbers and different things to figure out. And it's also really challenging for that to be cracked. So make sure that this trend of the passphrase is better than using just like the random letters and different things like that. So sometimes I'll combine like the place where I was married with my favorite restaurant with the name of the department I work in. And then I'll change, like the A's to at signs or the I's to exclamation points or the E's I'll turn to backwards threes or all these different things to kind of help that. And that kind of helps me remember the passwords if I don't feel comfortable using a password keeper. So there's lots of really, really great options on that. All right, let's keep going. So it froze. Oh, there we go. All right, shopping and spending safely. So online shopping is just very, very convenient. And so I love it. Like I just talked about like Amazon and how convenient it is, but it's really important on a couple of things when you're doing some online shopping to keep you safe is avoid those third-party payment systems. Your URLs should always change from the http:// to https:// I'd recommend using your credit card instead of your debit card if you're shopping online because your credit card is not connected to your personal checking account, right? As your debit card is or your other savings information. And then always change your passwords regularly, especially if you have some information saved online. I personally don't like to save my credit card information on mine. Like if I'm going to buy on walmart.com, I will put in my credit card each time. Yes, it's inconvenient, but it feels safer to me. So it is a convenience, but just kind of, again, balancing that risk versus convenience. Credit card freezes. So as of 2018, credit freezes are now free for consumers. So that's awesome. You can freeze and unfreeze at will for your credit. Just for your information, that it sometimes takes an hour for that credit to be lifted. So, for example, if you go into your financial institution and you apply for a car loan or you're wanting to open up a new account and they try to pull your credit and it's frozen, you'll have to have a password to be able to unlock that credit. A lot of times people will freeze their credit and they'll forget to write their password down. And so then you have to go through the steps of that, and it does take a little bit of time. So it is a little bit inconvenient, but then it's also really nice to know that you're the only one that can access it, nobody else. So this can be really, really helpful for seniors or children that have minimal need to access their credit, right? And they don't need to go buy a lot of those things that might need your credit. So to do this, you must contact each bureau. And sometimes that might seem a little bit overwhelming. So you could also just do a credit alert. You'll need to update the request each year. But if you add one to the bureau, it applies to all the bureaus and requires lenders to go through extra steps to verify if it's actually you that is applying for the credit. So as we switch our discussions to scams, you should know that with both scams and ID theft, the goal really is about getting your money. There is a minor difference though. So usually in a scam, they're either trying to build trust or threaten you, right? So that you will give them what they want. Whereas with like ID theft, they'll just take it. So I think it's interesting to note that in 2022, there was $1.3 billion stolen through just romance scams alone. So we're going to talk just a little bit more about those scams. Romance scams to me are some of the saddest that I've seen. They're playing on the vulnerable. I have had some experiences with romance scams in the credit union industry of members, either losing a spouse or they live alone and they're really sad. And so they use a lot of chats and somehow they've developed a really significant relationship with somebody online that they've never met. They have pictures of them, but who really knows if those pictures are real? I had a gentleman who was going through a really tough, difficult time. He had actually lost his home in a fire and he was living in a hotel room and was feeling quite lonely and sad. And thought he had these really great friends and some girlfriends that he was connected to online. And he ended up in the end losing $70,000 in romance scams. They play on your vulnerability. They want you to send money. Usually somebody's sick or they say they need this, usually in a different country. So a huge percentage of romance scams usually does happen with older individuals, but it's common for anybody. So a huge percentage of all the calls made in the US are scams. There are some good info about scams on the Federal Trade Commission site, and that will be listed at the very end of our resource page today, at the end of this seminar. You will also have the information on how to opt out of phone offers as well. Unfortunately, calls coming from outside the country really don't care about the do not call registry. So you can try blocking the numbers or paying for a service if they're really, really annoying. But I know most companies now have alerts and they show up on caller IDs. So usually if I don't know the number, I just don't pick it up, right? So the best advice for avoiding to becoming a scam victim is to really slow down. So if you get a call or somebody's saying something, slow down, take a deep breath, ask yourself, like, for example, would your grandson really be in jail in Mexico? Or does the IRS really want me to pay them with gift cards? Like, take a deep breath, think about what they're asking. Doesn't make sense to you. Again, ask a friend. I know it sounds really, really silly, and we are all in clear minds right now. So we're like, yeah, of course, like that does not seem like that's even something I'd fall for. But it's really hard when you're in an emotional state to be able to think clearly. That's how they get what they get. So slow down and verify before acting, and don't mess with them. Just let it go, right? If you get a text or an email, just delete it. Don't feel like you need to reply, because if you reply, they're going to keep replying. Don't trust caller ID all the time. A local name or number can be spoofed. And don't trust the information on an online profile, especially with those romance scams. Pictures can be lifted of another person, and there's always a lie told in the narrative. A lot of times in these romance scams, somebody's sick or somebody has cancer or something like that, and they need you to send money to them, or they're out of a job, or they don't have food for their kids or something like that. So almost every carrier lets the report text spam numbers. So you can ask your carrier and block those, so you can look into that. If you think that there is a chance that the situation is legit, but you don't trust the call or the email or the text, get out of the incoming message and initiate the contact using the number you know, right? Just kind of like we talked about before. Like if somebody's calling you from Canvas, why don't you contact Canvas yourself and see if this is something that's really going on? Or if your grandson is in a bad situation and needs money, why don't you call your grandson and make sure that that is him and try to get a hold of him instead of reacting? And again, I'll reemphasize this several times. Never, ever give your sensitive information to anyone who's calling. So only if you initiated the call, right, to a trusted number. So just really, really important. Okay, so we talked a little bit about romance scams. We're going to go a couple of different ones. So the most important thing is we are all susceptible to scams. And a lot of the members that I've helped that have fallen for scams and have lost quite a bit of money, they're just so saddened and embarrassed, and they couldn't believe that they fell for it. And just want you to remember that never be embarrassed if you fall for a scam, because lots of really smart people do. Because like we've talked about, these bad guys take advantage of our emotions, and we're all human and we're not robots. We get excited, scared, hopeful, worried, and even generous to meet people's needs. So scammers use trust or fear to get money, and they take months to build that relationship. And they can also get really nasty with you on the first call. So I'll give you some examples, and I'll tell you a couple personal stories that I've seen. So here's some popular techniques. So romance scams, like we talked about, are a big deal. A couple of red flags that you might see is a person will not meet you face to face. Or if you search for their photo online, they may come up with another name. Charity scams always pop up after natural disasters. The frustrations here because they're taking your money is something that they take money away from the real charities, right? So you're trying to use your generous heart and to help make a difference, and they're taking that money away when it really could be used for something good. It's just maddening. For example, one of the things that I've just been a part of recently is my daughter. She was born with some bone deficiencies, so she was bow-legged, and she needed to have some major surgeries to turn her legs out. And she had a surgery in February. The surgeon was super specialized. He was the only surgeon in the state of Colorado and west of the Mississippi that performed this surgery. And we got a call that he had died. The surgeon who had performed the surgery for my daughter was killed in a motorcycle accident. And this was just a couple weeks ago. And so the nurse said, don't believe everything you read online, because they didn't want to share the details of the crash. And I can understand that. But of course, when you say to me, don't look online, I'm going to look online, right? Like that's just the natural thing inside of me. So I went ahead and put his name in, and I was doing some research to see if there was any like news articles or anything on how he died. And he was a very prominent doctor in the field of medicine, especially in this part of Colorado. And so as soon as I put his name in, there were so many different scams and bad links and different things of people trying to take advantage of this situation because he was so well known. So that's just terrible. So there's just a lot of variety out there. And again, they can use websites, letters, or emails that look really legitimate. And so it's just really, really important to be really vigilant. And so, and to use all of the things that we've talked about today. Oh, I forgot. Another common scam is to say you have come into money, and then they say, oops, I gave you too much money, give me some back. This can be like online job hiring, or maybe selling something. A lot of times I shared an example like this with a CSU student. I've had a lot of members that will get like this amazing insurance check in the mail, right? And they need to deposit it into their account, and then they need to send some money back. So those are fake bad checks. And if you deposit into your account, they'll have access to it and they'll take that. And then when the check really does clear, because it takes anywhere between 7 to 10 days, there's no money there, and then you're out. So it's really important when you do those things, and when you go into your financial institution, they'll ask you questions about the check and the story about the check or different things like that. Be really open and honest with them. Like those tellers and consultants and bankers really care about you and your money, and they want to keep you safe. So they're just asking you questions to understand the stories behind things because of those vulnerable states that we can be in. And so just be really open and honest with them. There's no reason with your financial institution to feel like you need to hide anything because they're looking out for you. Okay. All right. We're almost done here. So this right here, as we promised you, is the resources. So some may be more interested than others, depending on your age and risk factor for the actions that you might already be taking. So this is really helpful for some of those things that we've talked about today. The next slide, also how you can opt out of phone and mail offers, like we also talked about. All right, so I just want to leave you with a caution and try not to fear, right? Like I know sometimes we live in a world that there's just a lot of bad things happening, and it gets a little bit anxiety driven sometimes, but the best thing to do is to educate ourselves like we've done today, and then to go out and live and do our best and use your resources and second pair of eyes and go to your financial institution because they want to partner with you to keep you safe. And I just want to make sure that there's no questions that we need to answer, but I appreciate you coming in today and being a part of this seminar with me. Is there any questions in the chat or any questions that we need to cover that may not have been addressed?
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I just know that Kim's having a little bit of some technical issues. So I've been doing it so far, but if you have any questions, please email me directly. I threw my email in the comments there, and we'll make sure that we get you connected with Kim directly for some additional answers to your questions. But thank you all for joining us today and for your patience again with the technical difficulties. In lieu of on-screen Q&A for this, we'll get you connected. But if you miss something or you need to watch the recording as soon as the stream is over today, we will make sure that you have access to that. You can actually just refresh your page as soon as we hit end and watch anything again. It's also viewable forever on our Alumni Association YouTube, so make sure that you have that bookmarked as a resource. We will send that over in an email as well for you all. But thank you again for your patience. Feel free to watch the recording or reach out to me directly, and we will get you connected with Kim. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Rams!